Let's talk a bit about clinical. So I work in the clinical sciences and operations platform, and you see at the top there of just a very high-level value chain map. I won't go into the details, but what's important about that value chain is what is the result of it. And the result of it is a decision. There is a massive amount of structured and unstructured data, documents, information, analysis, etc., that culminates at the end of that process in helping to make a decision whether or not to go forward with a particular project, therapy, compound vaccine, or to stop it. And so ultimately in clinical trials, as we work with doctors, patients, customers, etc., we're looking to get to a decision. The way we get to that decision is quite complicated. As you can see there at Sanofi, again in the clinical space, there's greater than 100 processes. Some of these processes are regulated, as we are a regulated environment. Some of them are not. Some of them have to be followed very, very, very carefully, very specifically, to a very specific metric and time frame. But others are very unstructured and adaptive. For example, in clinical research, we work with physicians. We have physicians directly on staff. A lot of the work they do in designing a protocol to run a trial is about science. And it's very hard to put a very, very strong structure around scientific work. In the industry, people have tried and failed, frankly, many times to do that, to really bring more discipline to the scientific process, but it's really a lot of creativity. So in clinical, we have this very strong mix of very disciplined, regulated processes under compliance and ones that are more ad hoc, more creative by design. We work in over 40 countries when we run clinical trials. Of course, in the United States, in France, as we are a French company, but around the world, South America, Asia, Northern Europe, etc. So we're running these 100 processes, regulated, adapted, in more than 40 countries around the world. We're doing this for over 40 different projects at any one time, trying to get over 40 different trials or new molecular entities and make a decision about them at various phases of clinical development. And of course, we're doing this for patients. Now, we may not be working directly with patients, but we work directly with the investigators, the doctors, and we want this to be a positive experience with the doctor when they work with Sanofi. We want them to want to work with us because we've got innovative science, but also because our operations, our processes are easy to work with. You have to keep in mind that a lot of the physicians, and maybe one of your physicians that's participating in a clinical trial, they may have 5 different pharmas they're working with, and we all have different ways and processes of doing things. And so if we want to keep those good physicians coming back that have the patients we're looking to help, it needs to be easy to work with us. If it's hard to work with us, they're not interested, they're going to go to somebody else who can help them provide value to their patients. So that's a very important point about clinical. When we look at what clinical trial team members do, the people who run the trials, they have a lot of challenges. And I've grabbed some quotes here from some of my colleagues, and it is ultimately all about change. They're swirling in constant change while trying to be compliant. We are a regulated industry. We have to follow FDA and EMEA guidelines and regulations, but yet we have to change and innovate. So how do we do those two contradictory things together? And there's constant stress and challenges with doing that. We want to change, we want to innovate, we want to find new ways, but we don't want to do anything that compromises safety or compliance with our regulations. If you go and you watch a typical clinical trial team member, whether it's a study manager or somebody who works with the physicians, their life's a nightmare. They're working in a functional world. They go into 5 or 6 different systems, functional systems to do their jobs. One day they may go into the trial management system, do some work there. They have to leave that one. They go into another system to check some data or do some analysis, and over again. And this is terrible. If you talk to them, one of the common things you hear is, we just want one place to do our work. Give us a workbench where we can just do everything. Help guide us through the parts of the process that we have to follow. May not be so interesting, so we don't have to think about that. And that gives us room to think about the more value-add work we can do to make sure that we're doing things in a safe and compliant fashion and bringing value to the investigators and the patients. There's a big emphasis now on outcome-focused. So it's not about just executing activities, but about getting outcomes. and successful outcomes for patients based on metrics and transparency. And this happens at all levels. It's not only at the level of the investigator or the team member who's working together to know how well a process is working or not, but we have an obligation, both ethical and regulatory, to be transparent to the public in what we're doing. And there's huge pressure to be more and more transparent in how we do things and what the outcomes are. We work more and more and more with external partners. As I said, we're not trying to do everything ourselves. We can't move fast enough if we try to do everything ourselves. So therefore, we work very, very often with external contract research organizations, and they want transparency in our processes so we can interoperate. So there's a huge pressure to be focused on results and interoperating. It's a very complex world of internal and external collaborators. And of course, the workforce is changing. So a lot of what we do is mobile. We work in many different countries, as I told you about, and we work in a very collaborative way, internal, external, with doctors, with other trial team members, with other companies. And people say constantly, we do our banking on our phone, we do Facebook on our phone, whatever. Why can't we do this as we run trials? So we hear this constantly. These are the challenges in terms of we want to work in a mobile way, we want to use our own devices, we want to work in a way that is natural to us. If you look in a typical, I'd say, pharma, you'll see many different generations, especially millennials that are joining, and they don't work in email. They don't do that. They work in Facebook or Twitter. So why can't we do that when we run trials, right? It's a more efficient way to collaborate. It's a more natural way to work, and we have to embrace this change. So we have a lot of challenges. You can see these are just a few of them, but we want to help. So